joke was that our state flower is mildew because it rains so much.
And so you might just accidentally push yourself in the wrong direction a little bit, and then it's like, I'm going to pay for it the next day.
There's no guarantee whether we'll do it.
But I was just like chilling, I look over and I was like, oh, hello, vagina.
Keep that compass pointed, true north to what you believe.
Definitely don't go to school.
Go to rock and roll school.
That's kind of crazy, but
I don't remember this.
Me neither.
But when it comes to write lyrics, I really, it's a pain in the ass for me,
Wow, this is what I want to listen to during my whole life.
Did you really bring that up? That was a private conversation.
I hope people keep thinking that I'm really relaxed while I'm playing and do not realize when I'm playing the difficult parts of the song.
Those things are always interesting just because I'm so scattered.
Polka metal can be interesting.
Polka metal, yes. I like it.
It's a microphone. What am I supposed to do with this? I'm not sure. I don't remember.
I know who to sue.
Yeah.
It was that being told I can't and I shouldn't made me want to do it.
And I'm really hopeful that that's not possible.
I want to be in their presence, so I conduct my life in a way that I hope that they want to be in my presence as well.
I'm looking at him and he's scared. He's scared of me.
I see kids when they see me in uniform go out of their way just to say to the top of their lungs, I hate the police. Can't stand the police. They used to love us. What happened?
I heard a bullhorn and it said, pull over.
And the first thing out of their mouth was,
what are you doing here? What are you doing here?
What are you doing here? I said, excuse me?
I said, why did you stop me? And he said, because we're stopping anyone who looks like they're not from this neighborhood.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts, based here in Seattle, Washington. Thank you so much for joining me on this Tuesday, June 1st, 2021. Wow, we're actually to June. This is my birthday month, as some people know. And a few housekeeping things, as always, before we get to my guest this afternoon. I do have more live streams coming up tomorrow and Thursday, and there's a few things that are they're already scheduled for next week. So if you'd like to know what's coming up, if you follow me, it's Eclectic Arts Media, one word, on Instagram. That's where I post everything first. And then a few things migrate over to Facebook and other platforms, but there's also things that are exclusive to Instagram. So that's kind of my platform of choice. And if you're watching this on YouTube for the very first time, if you could do me a huge favor and subscribe to my channel, that's greatly appreciated. If you want to know what's coming up, you can also hit the notification bell, but please be aware that you will get notifications in your inbox most likely about what's coming up. So some people aren't into that, but the subscription part, that won't affect you at all, other than it helps me with the algorithm, and you might see a few things like in your recommendations. And again, it's greatly appreciated if you subscribe to my channel. If you're on the YouTube, if you're on the Twitch side of things, if you could follow me over there, I always appreciate that. I see my numbers are starting to go up over on the Twitch platform as well, and that's actually where I started with all of this back on the 22nd of May, 2020. And speaking of which, this is the 200th live stream for Eclectic Arts, and so I'm extremely grateful to Alice for giving me the opportunity a little over a year ago, and to every guest that's come on. It's just mind-boggling to me to think that during a lockdown pandemic time, Eclectic Arts has actually broadened the reach and the scope, and I've had so many international guests, and people have come back for 2-3 interviews and multiple guest interviews at the same time. And again, I'm just it just kind of floors me that I'm at the 200th live stream today. And I was telling my guest pre-show, that's also kind of ironically and coincidentally, that when I hit the 100th mark, I had a director of a film for that 100th live stream. And then today I also have a director for the 200th. So maybe the 300th will organically be another person involved with film. Who knows? I didn't really think I was actually going to ever get to this point, but here I am. And so, yeah, 300, I guess, is not out of the question. 400, 500, who knows? But again, thank you so much for taking the time, for watching what I do, for supporting what I do. Speaking of that, if you are so inclined, there is a PayPal me link always in all of the YouTube descriptions that I post on my channel. So if you'd like to make a tip or a donation or a birthday present, that's always appreciated, but only if you're so inclined and in a position to do so. I completely understand if you're not, because most of the time I'm not. But so that's my housekeeping for today. Let's get to my guest, as I am extremely excited to talk with him about his film project, book, and all the programming that he's doing around his concepts. So my guest today is a filmmaker. He wrote, produced, and directed the powerful documentary Walking While Black. L.O.V.E. is the answer. Love is the answer. Please welcome to the Eclectic Arts virtual studio, Mr. A.J. Ali.
Hey there, Mark.
Hi, AJ. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. Happy birthday month and happy 200th episode. That is awesome.
Thank you so much, sir. It really does floor me that on the 200th episode, but I'm so grateful that I get to do this with you. So I'm always going to remember anytime I ask me, who was the 200th guest, I can say AJ Ali from the wonderful documentary Walking While Black. So that's really awesome. Yeah, and I'll be turning 51 in the middle of this month. So
all right now, that's awesome. Welcome to the 50s.
Yeah, it was a trip last year because I was on this virtual tour with a wonderful band called Alice, and we finished the first leg of that tour on the 15th of June, and then that very next day it's like boom. Now I'm 50 and I'll be 51, but things are actually going really well considering that I'm in that club and I've done 200 live streams and everything else. I just couldn't ever have pictured that at this time last year, what would have happened with the growth and obviously with the pandemic and everything else that we've been working through as a nation, as a world. That there's been a huge silver lining for me that I'm so grateful that I can actually say that I had a silver lining during this time, because so many people obviously went through some horrendous things and awful things, and I'm just grateful that I'm not one of them.
Amen. Amen. I'm happy for you, brother.
Yeah. So as I told you pre-show, I really wanted to talk to you about your documentary and the concept of love is the answer. And for people watching this, you can kind of see the L.O.V.E. is spelled out as an acronym because there's more depth and meaning behind it. So I want to kind of go back, though. So when did you first come up with the concept to start shooting this documentary? How far back are we going?
Well, we're going back to June of 2012 when I experienced a racial profiling stop by police, where I thought this one was going to be a little bit different than the others that I experienced, and I was fearful for my life on that day.
Oh, wow. Was it just the nature of the stop or the tone of the officer, or what kind of gave you that feeling? Just a gut feeling, or?
Yeah, it was the tone. It was one officer that stopped me while going for a walk in my own community. He was just very aggressive, very rude, and we were on the side of the road for a while, talking with him, threatening arrest and so forth, and finally, after I exercised my rights, and he really got to be aggressive, and at one point he got so flustered that he walked back to his own car and refused to get out of it. And I said to him over and over, "If we're done here, sir, I'm going to continue my walk." And when I did that, it was 5 minutes later when I had called my attorney to say, "Hey, you wouldn't believe what happened to me just now." That first officer and two other cars pulled up, and they rushed me. And before they could lay hands on me, I said, "My attorney's on speaker, and he hears everything." And that stopped them in their tracks. But I saw the look in their eyes, and I saw one officer had his hand on his taser. One officer was about to take me down, and I just knew that this was going to be, a different one. And I didn't know if I was going to get out of there in one piece.
Holy moly. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that's obviously an incredibly unfortunate situation. Like you said, that was something that I felt like it was going to be a little bit different, which means that it's happened prior to that situation in 2012.
Yeah, many times. Not for going for a walk though, but while driving, while shopping, other things. But that was the next level. Yeah.
And I can't, and I would never say something as trite or demeaning as saying, well, I know how you feel, because I don't. I've been stopped by police during the middle of the day, but not so much because of my race as it was about how I look, because I was very much a heavy metal person. So I had my leather coat on, and I kind of looked like maybe I might be up to no good. So that's a different type of profiling. And they wanted to know what high school I went to and what I was doing out here. And this is in the middle of a busy street with businesses around me. I wasn't skulking around like by a house or something, which still doesn't give them the right to do that. But I've never, to my knowledge, been stopped because of being Asian or a person of color or anything like that. So just with you talking about that, that's got to be just a flood of emotions, from being angry, upset, to also just feeling really sad at the state that you can't even go walk in your own neighborhood without being harassed by the cops. And also, you had the wherewithal to know what to do in terms of calling your attorney and keeping that on. Some people wouldn't know what to do, or they don't have an attorney to call. So they would have probably been tased and taken down and probably brought down to the precinct and all, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. That's not lost on me, that bit of privilege, to have been able to call an attorney and actually have him pick up and be there and stay with me on the phone for the entire time that I was on the side of the road with them, to make sure that I got out of there okay. Not everyone has that luxury. I wish that was the case. And we're actually working on things to help give people better access to legal support, immediate legal support. My firm that I work with now, Reed Smith, is just incredible. Very, very proactive, and everyone needs that kind of support.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great that you're working on that aspect of this initiative, basically, to incorporate that as well. Because I'm sure there's just the educational point of, like, what are your rights? What should you be doing? Most people just don't know. And then they just kind of go from gut instinct, and sometimes that can take you down a road that the enforcement folks will take advantage of.
Yeah, and they're the ones that are supposed to de-escalate, and that unfortunately does not happen all the time. In fact, it's usually up to people like me to de-escalate a situation that shouldn't have been a situation in the first place. So we're doing a lot of work with law enforcement agencies around the country now. Just a quick fast forward, there was a happy ending to the Howard County Police Department story, in that when the film got completed, they actually became the first police department in the nation to license the film to use to train their officers.
Oh, wow. That's great to hear.
Yeah, and it was a hard road, because not only did that first incident happen, but when I reported it, wanting an apology, I didn't get the apology, and I started to get harassed. So for about a year, every time I left the house, I was followed. If there was a police car in the vicinity and they saw my car, they saw me, I was followed. I was stopped about a dozen times. My wife went through numerous incidents of harassment, and it was a pretty scary time. That year following my initial report. So it wasn't just that initial stop; it was ongoing harassment, and it took me getting the attention of a congressman to get things to turn around. And once it turned around, there was a whole new change in leadership. There's a new chief there. They're doing a lot of great things there now, and we got them working together with the NAACP on events where they raise money for young people, and so things are changing there, and that's what it takes. It takes people with, even if you're afraid. I was afraid. I was anxious. I was upset. I was angry. I had a flood of emotions coming from all different directions, but I didn't give up on what I felt was my responsibility to make things better, and I pushed it as much as I could, because I knew that day could have ended dramatically different for me and my family.
Yeah, I mean, my hat's off to you in terms of staying on the road that you wanted to stay on, to make a change for the better, because it'd be so easy to get consumed by the other side of that and deciding, I'm just going to dig my heels in and just anti-police this or anti-authority that, and instead be like, well, no, we need to find a way so this doesn't happen to anybody else. And it takes a big person to do that. And as we've seen over the last 4+ years, people have really dug in on different sides of issues politically, different sides of the aisle, to a degree I've never seen in my lifetime.
Yeah, that's true. Same here at 57 years old, to see people come out from all walks of life, every color under the rainbow to support, this notion that Black lives do matter. To see that happen last year, it was incredible. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw what happened. And I really just hope, we sustain that, right? That we keep loving people. We keep being aggressive for what is right, and we keep supporting each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm just now kind of flashbacking to, a year ago that I want to say today's June 1st. So it was probably, I think June 2nd is when we had the Blackout Tuesday last year, when everything was supposed to stop and reflect and learn and educate yourself, whatever you need to do, just kind of take a break from social media or whatever you happen to be doing entertainment wise. And I know for the virtual tour that I was on, that was the one show we didn't do. We took that time off, and I do remember trying to just kind of gather my thoughts about everything that had been going on. Up here in Seattle, we had just gone through the weekend of the riots up here. We had some fires in L.O.V.E, which is a suburb of Seattle, and it was just like the seeds of the CHOP area up on Capitol Hill that was going to start up. And yeah, God, it's strange for me to even think back that was only a year ago, but at the same time, it feels like it was longer.
Yeah, it's true.
But you're absolutely right. It's that it needs to be something that started and needs to be going to the next level, continuing, not just, oh, this was great. But now we're going back to it. Things are opening up and we can go back to what we were doing. It's like, well, no, if this was supposed to be something that you learned from, what do you do with it next?
Right. That's right.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you had this incident back in 2012 where you thought, this could end really, really badly for you. And then, like you mentioned too, that you continue with harassment, roughly like a year after that. So it's continual issues. And so that's when the seeds were of like trying to film and create a documentary then about this topic.
Yeah, shortly after the initial incident, I wrote an article that was well received. In fact, I got hundreds of responses from mostly Black mothers all over the country saying, thank you for writing something that I can use when I talk with my son or daughter about, what to do when you get stopped by the police. And, from there, I started to think, well, maybe there's a chance that they'll actually, pick up the phone one day and honor my request. And that never happened. All I really wanted was an apology and a promise to do better at first. But when the harassment kicked in, I knew that I had to turn things up a notch. And I'm a military veteran. And at the time I was undiagnosed with PTSD and other things. I was experiencing a lot of dark emotions around that time. And there were days when I figured, well, maybe I should go after them before they come after me, because I had been told that they were going to come after me. In fact, at one point, I had a female officer from that department saw me in a Starbucks and said that, be careful, you've got a target on your back. And then she said, when you get done with the work that you're doing to make a film about police harassment, maybe you should consider doing one about sexual harassment within policing, because that's what she had experienced. So the whole culture is toxic, and so I had people coming up to me telling me things that just blew my mind about what was going on behind the scenes. Black officers telling me how much racism they were experiencing, coming to work, finding a noose or a banana in their locker, being called the N-word, just horrible things on the job, and them feeling like they couldn't do anything about it because they didn't want to lose their employment. They didn't want to get bounced out of the industry that they loved so much. But there was this internal battle going on because they knew they wanted to do the right thing. They knew they wanted things to change, but they didn't know how to get it done. And they weren't getting support from us in the community as well. And so, that it's really been an eye opener for me, and it really helped to help me develop some empathy for peace officers who are trying to do the right thing, but they're working inside a system that is so broken. And I hate to even say broken, because the system was designed this way. So it's really kind of operating the way that it was intended to operate. You know, in England, policing was started by Sir Robert Peel, the modern day policing, where police are the people and the people are the police. But in the United States, it was formed as slave catching. And so that system, the way that it was created, is kind of working exactly as the way it was intended. And so now is the time that that system needs to change and become more like Sir Robert Peel stated, where people are the police and police are the people. You know, the public and the police are one community, one family, really, when it comes down to it. We need to treat each other like family. So that's the mission I'm on. It took me through a really dark journey where I didn't know what was going to happen, but I wound up in a good place where we're now being able to teach people how to love each other, for people to love the community that they serve, and for community members to look beyond the badge and look at the humanity in the people that are doing that job and accept them as family.
Wow. So many things you just said there that were so insightful to me. One, thank you for your service. I always, huge supporter of the military, of the men and women that have been fighting for our freedom for decades, if not centuries. I think it's also interesting too that some people don't know that history in the United States of what policing, modern day policing, what it was built from. And like you said, unfortunately, it's really doing exactly how it was designed, with being slave catchers back then in the day. And some people just think somehow, well, the police were just there to help protect and enforce laws. It's like, no, they're trying to do certain things for certain groups of people, not for everybody. And you're right, this is the time to make the change, because with the movement from last year, if nothing else, that's when all this awareness came out of, like, I mean, it was right in front of our face. So if you had your head in the sand about this issue, I don't know how you can continue to do that after what happened last year. Even though there are some people who still continue to do that, but I can't fathom why. But I'm always going to be someone that's a proponent of trying to make change for the better, for trying to bring people together and not separate people. And not saying it's easy. Clearly it's not. I've had many guests on that have very differing viewpoints from my own, but it's like, I want to hear what they have to say. And as long as there's some level of respect there, then we can have those discussions. And I think that's even almost like one of the pieces, just for me personally, that we have to start making strides toward, because if you're not having a dialogue with people, quote unquote, on the other side or of whatever issue you have, then you're never going to get a resolution or even a compromise from it, because you're saying this, they're saying that, and then it becomes, F you or whatever, and you're just kind of done with it. It's like, what, is this how you want to live? No. You want to be able to exist. And I think I live out here in Edmonds, Washington, which is about maybe 30 minutes north of Seattle. And I've had my share of the police here that have had to come for different reasons, drug reasons, not for me personally, but just in our area is kind of the area is not as good as it once was. But I've had some really positive interactions with police. I've had some that were not so positive when they came knocking on my door, and just that vibe from the guys is like, I didn't do anything wrong. Why are you talking to me in that tone, or looking at me like I did something else in my own apartment? That unnerved me for a while. So I can't imagine going through what you've gone through, and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of other African Americans have gone through. And encounters with the police.
Let's make that millions, because if just do some informal polls, right? If 8 out of 10 Black people that I speak with, 8 out of 10 have experienced something with the police that was racially charged, and that should not be. That should not be.
So that's okay. So that's 80%, and that means, yeah, geez.
And by no means is that's not a scientific study,
Oh no.
But I challenge people, to ask other people, ask Black people in their circles, right? Have you ever experienced racial profiling? And tell me about it. I want to know. And I'll bet that, everyone that you talk with, you'll have the same similar numbers, maybe 8 or 9 out of 10 will say that they've experienced it. And for the longest time, people in the majority didn't want to hear it. Even when I went to my friends, I'll give you a real quick story. After the incident in June of 2012, I went to 2 Bible studies that I had been participating in. One was a group of all Black people, and the other was a group of all white people, except for me. Dear friends in both of them, business leaders involved in the community and so forth, right? I went to the Black Bible study. Every single person in there had experienced something similar. Every single one. So we cried about it. We made jokes about it. We encouraged each other because we knew that it was going to happen again. And we were preparing ourselves, to deal with it, to be resilient. When I went to my white Bible study, I'm the only Black guy there. Every single hand went up like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened to you. Some people said they were sorry. One person said, are you sure you didn't do anything wrong? One person said, maybe it really wasn't as bad as you thought it was. And I got several comments like that, where they were just incredulous, couldn't believe that this was happening, and maybe I had done something to provoke it, or maybe I misunderstood what was happening, right? And so that's what happens in majority society with these things, is that it gets trivialized. Oh, it wasn't as bad as you thought, But the fact is when this happens to you, and then 30 minutes later, you got to go to work and perform as if nothing happened because nobody around you would care, even if you said something to them, that's a problem. There are immediate and long-term mental health ramifications of this culture where it's acceptable for police to harass Black people simply for the color of their skin. It's not right. It needs to stop. And really, up until now, there really haven't been a lot of tools to bring people together. And that's the mission that we set out on, to create a set of tools, including the film and the book and other things, to educate people, not just police and Black people, but to educate everyone about what's going on and how we learn simply to love each other like we're family.
Well, thank you for sharing that story about the 2 different Bible groups. I'd like to say that I'm shocked by that, but I'm not. And it reminds me of like when we talk about if it's the Me Too movement or something else, when the victim gets trivialized about, well, maybe it wasn't that bad. Or what did you do? What were you wearing? What did you say? Were you listening to rap music? Were you doing any kind of stereotype thing? It's like, did you even hear what I said? And they try to figure out a way. It's almost like to put themselves into a safe zone so they want to make sure that this actually doesn't happen in the world. You're exaggerating, right? It's like, no, trust me, I would never exaggerate something like this. I mean, it's going to stay with you for the rest of your life. And we're talking about, you mentioned that this was 2012. So you're a grown adult. Imagine if you're a child or a teenager or someone going through, that's a whole different ball of wax that we'd have to start talking about too. So much to unpack here.
Well, Mark, that's really what drove me. I started thinking about first of all the young people in my family, nieces and nephews and grandkids. And then I started thinking about all the young men and women who are, 18, 20, 24, haven't been through as many life experiences, as I have, may not be able to talk their way out of something that was possibly life-threatening. I used my words, and I was able to pick up a phone and get an attorney on the phone. Not everyone has that ability, and it's harder for some to express themselves when they're upset as well. That's understandable, especially if you're young. So, as the temperature's rising and you've got, someone who you think is supposed to be your protector is attacking you, your head's in a tailspin. And so I thought long and hard about that, about what can we do to protect this next generation so that it protects them when they're going through something like this. But more importantly, it helps maybe to get it to the point where they don't have to experience these things anymore. That's the goal.
Yeah, and that would be the ultimate goal too. If we can get to that point where it's a thing of the past, something we talk about that used to happen in past tense. Like I mentioned to your pre-show, I used to work in South Seattle and West Seattle with a lot of gang-involved youth and folks that were being kicked out of the Seattle school district, and from all walks of life. But predominantly, we had Black students that were sent to my program. So these are 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in Kirkland, which is a suburb. I had maybe one Asian friend, one friend who I didn't even know he was Mexican at the time. I just knew his skin color was different. And the rest of them were all Caucasian. So that's what I was used to my whole life. So working in South Seattle, even I was uncomfortable for a little while because I was not used to all the different racial folks and the different religions for sure. And I learned so much from just being around people and just taking the time to listen. Just like basically shutting my mouth and letting them, I should tell them a lot of times. I could tell a 13-year-old, I know you had a track record before you got here, and I'm not here to pass judgment on you. I'm actually here to try to learn from you because I need an education on these things. So we would try to come together, and it shocked them, one, because they never had an authority figure ever tell them that, where they were giving that basically that power or that platform to try to educate me. But then it also became something of them trying to learn from me that, maybe you've had every teacher in the book that eventually kicked you out of school, sent you down to the office, did something. It's like, we're not all like that. We're not all going to be doing that kind of thing. I'm going to expect certain things from you, but I also expect you to have expectations of me as well. And we have to kind of work that out. And I've had some of the best memories I've ever had with some of those students from down in that area. And I worked down there for almost 10 years. And I think back to a couple of them that I ran into them when they're 17, 18 years old, 6'2", down at the community center. They seem, hey, Mr. S, is that you? And I look over and I don't recognize this tall kid who used to be, like maybe 5 foot and like hiding in a chair in my classroom. And then I guess they could always tell my face too, of like, you don't know who I am, do you? You don't remember me. And I'm like, hey, you got me, man. I've had hundreds of kids that help refresh my memory, and they'll say something that they used to do, or they'll say something that happened in class, and then I'll know exactly who they are. But initially it's like, I don't know, man. Give me a break. I'm old. But I think it's just that willingness to have those discussions, to try to see if you can move this topic forward in a way that, like you're saying, the ultimate goal is to not have to have this happen to anyone, any generation that's coming. And so as you were making the film, was it going to be something so where did the concept of L.O.V.E come from? Was that during the film? Was that before it? Because I know there's all these pieces to it.
Yeah. So going back to 1998, I lost my brother, Abby, my older brother, to cancer. He had a 13-year battle, and he passed away, and I was there at the hospital, and his last words to me were, "Love is the answer." And then he transitioned on to heaven. And that stuck with me. And my older brother was everything to me. So I tried my best to put those words into action. And when this happened, actually 2.5 years into this Walking While Black journey, it was September 25th, 2014, my birthday, that I was in Hawaii. I had just finished a 50-state wellness journey to really try to reclaim my life back after going through just a tremendous amount of stress related to that initial incident and the follow-up harassment. And I was standing there in those waters, and I felt those words come back to me in a way that I'd never felt before, Mark. It was like I heard the whisper of God in my heart saying, if you want to make things better, you got to do it with love. Remember, love is the answer. And it was like that everything changed for me. I went immediately from feeling all this hatred for law enforcement to a sense of, we can do this. We can change things. And the acronym came for Love is the Answer. It wasn't just these words anymore. It became this mantra, that became a pledge. And that's what drove our work, and that's what has driven my life since that day. That Love is the Answer pledge. Can I read it to you?
Absolutely.
All right. So it goes like this. I pledge to learn about the people in my community, to unconditionally open my heart to their needs as if they were all immediate family members, to volunteer to be part of the solution in their life during both good and challenging times, and to empower everyone I meet to do the same as if our lives depended on each other. L.O.V.E. Learn, open your heart, volunteer yourself, and empower others. So that has become my driving force, and it has become the core of our work, of the film, of the book, of the webinars, of everything that we do. A new mentoring program is teaching people those principles now, and we're just trying to spread that really around the world at this point.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful acronym. Mantra is a really good word for it. A driving force in your life, and it's becoming something that's spreading out literally around the world now, with all the work that you're doing. I definitely want to say I'm very sorry for the loss of your older brother. I think some people, for me, having worked in community-based agencies for a good chunk of my lifetime, there's always going to be people that are, their heart's in the right place, they're doing everything that they possibly can do, and then sometimes the system is convoluted, let's say. It's something that maybe they can't get above that system to impact real change. They're making change where they can, which is, I would never, ever knock that. But it seems like there's so much more that could be done if certain things were removed or facilitated a different way. So as you had this almost like an epiphany in Hawaii about love is the answer, and then we don't have to have this hatred in our heart, we can look at things in a much more communal, positive way. Through those steps that you were taking, did you get to a point where, was it always going to be like this, or like what were some of the obstacles that came along as you were making the film, the book, the other pieces that you're doing? Because there's always going to be something that kind of gets there, and then you have to find a way to overcome it.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, was no support. No one wanted to hear anything about, what was happening between police and Black people in 2012, 2013, 2014, or 2015, for that matter. It really didn't start to change until the media made it a focus. And to be honest, I think they made it a focus because it helped their ratings. A lot of the major media, they don't pay attention to something unless it pays the bills, right? So when this started to become a moneymaker for them, I think that's when they started to put more and more of a spotlight on it. And then, of course, when the pandemic hit and we're all at home and we're socially isolated, and we're not doing our normal routine, and we're all taking in a lot of social media and news, and George Floyd gets murdered, then the whole world becomes part of this, and it really does take on a life of well, maybe there is a problem after all. Maybe they were telling the truth for the past 400 years, right? And some people are like, well, yeah, maybe we should do something about it, and so that's kind of where we're at now. Is what's going to happen, right? As things open up, is life going to get back to normal? We're going to stop caring about things like this, right? We're going to keep on just, doing what we're doing. I mean, it's opening back up, and we're seeing gun violence, mass shootings, other things, going back to the way it was, normal, right? So we got to embrace this time before we go back to what we were all doing before. We've really got to remember that lives are at stake. We've got my grandfather came from India, so I'm a quarter Asian, and so my Asian brothers and sisters, are hurting right now, right? And thankfully, the news is covering it, and people are doing something about it. But we got to keep attention on these things. We can't go back to what was normal before, because it wasn't right. We've got to just be focused on how do we become better at humanity, at being human beings, at loving each other and being there for each other. And so, we've got to keep that focus.
Absolutely. Here. I know with many of the guests I've talked to during these virtual interviews over the last year and some change, we've talked about how during the pandemic, including myself, you kind of realize like what was really important to you, what wasn't important to you. And then once you get past the situation that we're in and things open up or what have you, and things kind of return you back to normal, that you're going to be making some changes. Well, the proof's in the pudding as we're in this transitionary phase right now. And if we continue on an opening up path, it's going to be so easy to maybe you'll make that change for a little while and then just slip right back to what you're comfortable with. And especially if it doesn't directly affect you, then it becomes like, hey, I'm aware of these things and I believe in supporting this, and this, but what actual change are you trying to do now that you actually have the time or the resources or what have you? And yeah, it becomes something. And I just talked to somebody, I think it was last week, about the exact same issue that, so are you going to go back to, they're in a band, are you going to go back to doing things the way you did when you performed on stage, when you did your promotion, how you met your fans? And they're kind of, yeah, we can't wait to get back to it. It's kind of like, so did you like how everything was for you, either professionally or personally? And they had to think about it. It's like, well, no, I would change some things. Okay, so what are your steps to make those changes? Because it's easy to say and wish that stuff, but to actually do it's something totally different.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And it's vital. We have to, for our mental health, our emotional health, our physical health, we've got to change things. This country and this world can do a whole lot better. And it's not about waiting for Congress to create a law. Everyone's talking about the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, and why people aren't getting that done. Meanwhile, people at grassroots levels, like you and me, we can do something about it. And that's where it's at. All politics are local. It always comes down to what we do on a local level. And we as individuals, we got to step up and do something for the greater good, something good for someone who doesn't look like us, something for someone who isn't maybe as privileged, as, like I mentioned, I was able to call an attorney, right? Well, part of my job now is to make sure that every person who looks like me can call an attorney and get somebody to pick up, right? We got to think beyond ourselves and think for the greater good.
Yeah, and absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. I think it's something too that's interesting that I don't know if it's necessarily generational, but it seems to me at least that more and more people are just not willing to even like interact with someone, just even on a basic social life. You see somebody at a grocery store and just saying hi to them if you crisscross their path. It's kind of like keeping distance from people. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if social media probably had something to do with some of that with the younger generations of like creating this false sense of what the world is actually like, good or bad. And I'm kind of guilty of it myself. I've had to put myself out there more in the last, say, 5 to 10 years because I was like, so how are you going to get these opportunities? And it could just be something just to meet new people, let alone anything, beyond that. It's like, well, you have to be able to say hello or have a conversation with somebody, even if it's just about the weather or anything, just to start those seeds, because then those turn into something bigger. But if you don't even take that step, then you're actually part of the problem is the way I look at it. And so I remember that all the time. So if I see a neighbor that I don't know, I don't sit there and just like stay in my lane and keep to myself. It's like I'll wave to them, say hi, what's going on, how you doing, if they're walking their dog or whatever. So I've actually met more of my neighbors than I have in probably, I've lived out here way too long, more than in the last 20 years. So, and you're absolutely right about it becomes, I used to tell people all the time that you can't be like something part of the time. So like if you're an activist, if you're an advocate for civil rights, for any kind of rights, then it's something that's ingrained in you and you have to be that all the time. You can't pick and choose it. It can't be something where you're on the fence, most of the time. It's like, no, where do you stand on this? And take those steps to get going toward it and keep having your intention to make that change happen. And yeah, it starts with you.
Yeah, it really does. I was on a show the other day with Danny Glover, and everybody knows Danny Glover as an actor, right? Brilliant actor. But one of the things he said struck me. He said, "I am not an actor. I'm so much more, so many other things. I'm an activist. I'm a family member, and I act. And here's a man who is really, really deeply involved in social justice and other things, and making a real difference. But his profession is, he acts from time to time. That's how he pays the bills. So we do all have to look beyond what is the title on our business card, right? And really be more of a community member. That will help a lot. In fact, if we can all learn to do that, just as you have, I think everything will change. Everything will become better as a result of that.
I absolutely agree, and I love the fact that that Danny Glover mentioned that he's not an actor. He's all of these things, just like any other human being. It's you may know me as this because I came into your theater or into your home via the TV, but it's like, no, I've been involved with some of these other aspects of what I do. And I flash back to my late uncle, who started a nonprofit here in Seattle. That's actually the one I used to work at in South Seattle. And he had pictures of him back in the 60s protesting at one of the local community colleges. And even like when he was, he fell ill towards the end of his life, if there was something he saw on the news, he was still, I mean, he probably should have been in bed or whatever, trying to get better or saving his energy. But again, you can't turn it off. He was there. He'd be there marching, or they're on a protest, or they're on the news talking about it because they wanted a soundbite from a community member that was well respected. And that just kind of always stayed with me, that he's been like that basically his whole life. And he won't stand for injustice. He wouldn't stand for just sitting by the sideline and just kind of, well, it'll get better. Maybe someone else will make it better, and I'll deal with it tomorrow. It's like, no, tomorrow's today.
That's right.
And you're right. I think if people just kind of go out of themselves a little bit, also maybe turn up their notch of empathy a little bit too, we'd see some massive change around the world if people could just do that just a little bit.
That's true. And I hope all your viewers and listeners, I hope they take this pledge to heart, because I challenge people, try it out, on the people in your life for just 1 week and see what happens. That your neighbor, your family member that's the one that's really hard to get along with, the person at work that you just can't stand to be around, but you've got to be because you got to do the job, right? Try it out. Try it on that person that cuts you off, and then you see them in the grocery store, right? Try it out. Learn. Open your heart. Volunteer yourself to be part of the solution and empower others. And if people take that challenge and try it for 1 week and it doesn't work out for them, I'll give them their money back.
There you go, everybody. The ball is in your court. And I love the fact that I'm thinking about, just like we've been talking for the last 50 minutes or so, that I can think of one person in particular right now who I don't see eye to eye on with pretty much anything. But through talking to them, which has not been easy, I started to at least understand a little bit of where they're coming from, and hopefully the same things happen for them of where I've been coming from sometimes, because they said a few things out of their mouth that I just immediately turned my head like, did you really just say that? I mean, are you that? At the time, I was like, are you that stupid? I hate saying that, but that's what I thought. And then I had to catch myself. So wait a minute, why did they say that? Do they even realize, how they're coming across to people like myself as a person of color? And they didn't. That's what I found out. They didn't really realize how emotionally charged that could be for them to say something as a phrase that I'm like, you didn't learn anything in the last year and a half and some change about what's going on in society, and it's actually happening. It's not some made up Hollywood movie idea. It's actually something that's been going on, for 400 years. But we got, so she learned something, and I learned something too from her. And that's when things, just like with the mantra of L.O.V.E, is really, really powerful, because that's when you start understanding, if I keep doing this in all the different aspects of my life and the different people that I encounter, especially for those that get on your nerves or drive you nuts, or they just rub you the wrong way, it really makes things so much better for everybody.
Yeah, it does. And, let's be honest, right? We're not going to get everyone to get on the same page, right? There are people out there that hate people for whatever reasons. And no matter what we say to them, they're going to keep on, feeling that way. So I'm not naive, right? At 57 years old, served in the military, been around the world, been to every state. I'm not naive. I know that some people just aren't going to change, right? But that shouldn't stop us from being the change that we want to see in the world, right? The more we do that, the more we go with the light instead of the darkness, the more light there will be in the world. And that's what we've got to stay focused on. Even since doing this work, I've had every week there has been something to happen, whether it's in the early days, there were death threats when people found out that I was going to, come after a change in policing. I got threats from police, right? So they're going to take me out. And so, but I continued. We got to keep on doing the work. Every week I have something that tells me, man, this is hard. Maybe do I really want to do this? Maybe I should just go play golf every day, right? But then there's that one thing that happens that lets me know I'm on the right track. Like this past week, I had a police chief call me out of the blue. He was referred by another chief, and things are going on in this chief's department, and he doesn't have a handle on it, and he wants things to change. He's tried everything else. Now he's going to try love, right? Because he's tried everything else. And so that was enough for me to say, all right, we're on the right path. We're going to keep on going, right? And we've got to just get over the hurdles, go through the walls, keep doing the work no matter how hard it is, because the more we focus on light and love and being there for people and empathy, the more of that we're going to see in our life, in our community, in our nation, and in the world.
Extremely well said. And the fact that police chief called you out of the blue to say, hey, I don't know what else to do. I've tried everything. What is this program of yours, and how do I implement it with my precinct? Yeah, that's everything. That's really, like you said, I mean, that's yet another reminder of like why you're on that path and why you stay on that path to keep pushing. And yeah, like you said, you're not naive, and you've been around the block a few times, just like myself. So you realize that those people are out there, that it's going to be a much taller mountain to climb in terms of trying to change them, but that still doesn't change your path of what you're trying to do because of those people. You say, well, I'll get to you later then. I'm going to work on these people here that are maybe not as tall of a mountain, that might be a little bit more susceptible to willing to listen to what I have to say and to try. And yeah, to try out this concept for a week or 2 weeks with somebody, even if it's trying it out with me. Maybe I rub somebody the wrong way and I don't even realize it. You just never know. But having that willingness to do it, that's huge. And you mentioned to me too, and I mentioned, that before we went live, that I've got a background as an educator and I've worked a lot of things with students. You mentioned that the program's now working its way into schools. Can you speak to some of that, please?
Yeah. That's my favorite subject. In fact, Trey Carlisle, Trey was in the film, and at 17 years old, he was filmed. Now he's 22. And Trey has become our first fellow, Love is the Answer fellow. So we give him a stipend every month for the whole year, and he's working on things on our behalf. And he's also become our first youth development director. So we've gotten into high schools and colleges all over the country, UCLA, Syracuse, Johns Hopkins, and many, many others. Elon College and Soka University, where Trey went. We're in a partnership with New Road School, which is a K through 12 in Santa Monica, where they're helping us to develop programs for K through 12 schools. The students are actively engaged in that work. And we have a partnership with Dallas College in Dallas, Texas. They've got a bunch of different campuses, and they're working with us on training programs for teachers. And so now we've got full-blown curriculum. So for a class, middle school, high school, or college, we have a curriculum that they can use for a complete semester. And we've even got some schools that are making it a graduation requirement to see our film with peace officers and discuss it in order for students to graduate. So it's really become just a tool that schools can use. And the film is perfect for middle school, high school, college, and we're creating things to go even down into elementary school. We have a mascot, a multicolored bulldog by the name of Kona that we love. And that we're creating a storyline with, so that we can take it in stuffed animals and on apparel and so forth, and comic books, and take that into elementary schools as well. So if you remember McGruff the Crime Dog, which was really popular, well, we created Kona the Love Dog. And hopefully in 5 years, everyone in the world will know Kona, and and it'll help us to get into more students' lives around the world.
That's amazing. Congratulations with doing that. And obviously it's just the beginning of something that's probably going to just spread that much further into all of the different levels of school. And like you mentioned, going into the elementary ages. And I have a random mind. Did you pick Kona because of you being in Hawaii when you had that kind of epiphany moment?
Yeah, Hawaii has always been a special place for me. In fact, in ways that I didn't even know until recently. My first visit was when I was 9 years old, and the island spoke to me at 9. My father was very successful in business, but he was also an alcoholic and a domestic abuser. So he beat my mom often, and he terrorized us. And little did I know that my mother was, she stayed home with my older sister, and my younger sister, and my father went to Hawaii with me and my older sister. And during that time that we were in Hawaii, she was preparing for an escape that would happen later. And so when we were in Hawaii, I just felt the island speaking to me, Oahu. I just felt a comfort, a peace. And going back there every decade of my life since then, every time I've been, the island has spoken to me, and that aloha spirit, has really been just giving me messages and recharging me. I wrote most of the Love is the Answer book there. My mother, who worked for NSA, after the divorce from my father, he was threatening her life. And I didn't know it until recently that when I went into the Air Force, my mother got death threats from my dad, and NSA moved her to Hawaii so she could be safe. She worked at Pearl Harbor for a few years and lived there. And so I spent a lot of time, whenever I got on leave, I would go and visit with her, and the island would speak to me. She never told me that because she didn't want me going after him, because I would have. Recently, the visits to Hawaii, the 2014 visit changed my entire life. And then my anniversary recently, a few years ago, my wife and I went, and there were amazing things that happened then as well. So Kona is a direct result of the relationship that I've had with the Hawaiian Islands, and it's just meant the world to me. It really is my spiritual home.
Okay, wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And sorry everybody that I disappeared for a little bit. I was like, hey, I've gone an hour and I haven't disappeared. This is great. I solved the problem. And I disappeared. But something else that I also saw a little bit about, AJ, was that there was, I want to say it was back on the East Coast, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, where there was a garden created through like the Love is the Answer. I don't know if it's initiative or a grant or something, but there's all these kind of stipulations that go along with it, which I thought were great. Can you kind of speak to some of that as well?
Sure. We've been trying to do this for a while now. We finally got our first groundbreaking. There's a chief who goes by Chachi. His name is Chief Anthony Paparo, but he goes by Chachi. He's in Yeadon, Pennsylvania, which is just outside of Philadelphia. He hosted one of our first, we have an event. It's called the National Day of Reconciliation. It's now going to be called Love is the Answer Day. It's September 17th. And so September 17th, a couple of years ago, Chachi was one of the organizers of an event where they showed the film. And someone from neighboring Bucks County saw it and then went back to their county and told the DA about the film, and it kind of spread from there. So we started having talks about wanting to do a garden, and folks in Bucks County wanted to work on one, and Chachi wanted to create one, and then he finally pulled the trigger on it, and the first garden groundbreaking was last month, and we gave them a $500 grant to help with the expenses. And there's certain things that they have to do. It's got to be organic. There has to be veterans and returning citizens and peace officers and other people from the community involved in the actual maintaining of it. And I say veterans because of my personal experience, where I know that, with PTSD and other things, it's a really soothing environment. It's really therapeutic, and it gives us as veterans a sense of purpose, to have a mission. And so we're inviting veterans, especially those that have PTSD, to participate in these gardens. So when that groundbreaking happened, we have pictures and so forth. It was beautiful, but Chachi's committed to actually doing more. He wants to have a garden within walking distance of every person in Yaden, which is really phenomenal. So we're talking probably 5 or 6 by the time he's all done. And we're hoping to have dozens of these, if not hundreds of these, around the country. And we're looking for groups to work with, and we're able to support them with a matching grant up to $500 if they adhere to all of the requirements. They've got to give at least half of the food away to food insecure people in their community. It's got to be organic or near organic. They've got to make sure that everybody in the community participates. Peace officers have to participate in it. And there's some other minor rules, but it's really creating spaces where people can come, and safe spaces, where they can hear some spoken word or some folk music, or, they can learn how to plant and maintain tomatoes or other fruits and vegetables. And it's just something that's going to be beautiful. It's going to be beautiful spaces where people can come together, and while they're growing food, they can grow those relationships, and then, expand on that by, maybe someone, gets introduced to someone who can give them a job, or, training, or maybe a peace officer realizes that, oh, these people in the community are just like me, maybe I should treat them better, and vice versa, right? Maybe we get to know a peace officer while we're digging in the dirt, and maybe we don't even know that person's a cop until we've been there for 4 weeks, and by that time we've realized, oh, this person likes golf like I do. They're a Ravens fan like I am, maybe they're not so bad after all. And so we're just trying to create spaces. And Mark, we got to work on one together in the Seattle area, brother, where we can get people together, where lives can be changed.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm thinking that one of the places I used to work with, it wasn't affiliated with our nonprofit, but there was a community garden right there. And I don't know, this is terrible of me to say, I don't know who was responsible for it, who did the upkeep. I just remember it looked really beautiful, and the different vegetables that they were growing there. And it was like right off of the property in South Seattle, where I would have to go to the office every now and then. If I think of anything organization-wise to get in touch with you, I definitely will, because I would love to see that type of thing up here. And this is what's so amazing about AG having this conversation with you, is that look what you've done from this horrific incident in 2012. You've created a film that's been extremely powerful and spread a message around the world. You have a book to it. You've got a school curriculum for all levels. You're working on the elementary level in addition to it. You've got a community garden concept spreading around. And it's like, it could be, there's probably other things out there too that could also start taking some shape and initiative, branching off from this whole concept that you started.
Yeah, we actually put, the book is in 3 segments. And the first section of the book is 25 things I learned during my first 25 years of marriage, and how we can apply those things to the police community relationship. The second part of the book, though, is 25 things you can do right now to make a difference in your community. And so we talk about creating a community, love garden. We talk about getting together police and young people and painting a mural that's filled with hope, for the future of that community, or creating music together. Trey is doing some amazing things with not only our group, but a group called Music in Common. And we're working with them now through Trey, where people get together and they have these experiences over music. And then they graduate basically by making music together. And that's incredibly healing. So we've got 25 things that we've suggested in that book. The one I'm most excited about, and the one that can make the most difference, is mentoring circles. We've created this concept called Love is the Answer Mentoring Circles. And basically we're training 4 people to become mentors using the love principles. And then those 4 people commit to mentoring someone in their community for 12 months. Every one of the 4 people has to touch base with their mentee once a month for 12 months. So you did gang intervention work.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about the power of what can happen if a CEO and say a retired teacher and a peace officer and some random person from the community, right, all get together and love on, some 17, 18-year-old who's been pulled in different directions, right? This person has had no one show them love, right? No one they can count on. But what happens after that person experiences a solid year of positive reinforcement, of someone being there for them through thick and thin, good and bad, even when they mess up, they're still there, right? That's a game changer. And so the mentoring circles is going to be our biggest push. And out of that will come gardens and art projects and other things. But we're really asking people now, join us, become a Love is the Answer mentor, get the training, get certified, and get out there. And if you're a company, especially a big company with 10,000 employees, and there's a lot of them, put 1,000 of your people through our mentoring program, right? And make Love is the Answer your internal and external mentoring program. And we've got a company that's coming on board to do that now, and a few others that are considering it. And we're super, super excited about this message and this mantra spreading through those mentoring circles.
Wow, that's so much of this is resonating with me, and part of that's partially because I was a part of a mentorship program in the nonprofit down in South Seattle that I was a part of. I was matched with a young man who was a 7th grader who was gang involved out in West Seattle, and I was there. They even asked him, because he was also in my classroom, they're like, "Are you okay with Mr. S being your mentor?" because of the teacher-student relationship kind of thing. And then they asked me if I was okay with it. I said, "Yeah, I have no problem doing that. That's kind of why I signed up for this." And it worked out well for a while until he ended up moving. So there wasn't there was no fault or anything. It was actually going in the right direction. And then as I moved up here to Edmonds, I was part of a different mentorship program, but that was with folks who were young adults with disabilities. And so I was with him for, the program unfortunately lost funding. So the program ended in like 2 years, and they told us we could individually decide if we wanted to stay matched with our person or not. Mm-hmm. So we were together for at least 10 years. And so I've seen what can happen, things that I took for granted, just by being around somebody and being their mentor, let alone being trained in, the Love is the Answer way of doing the mentoring and the program and everything like that. But just even in general, it's like, my one young guy, he just liked hanging around with me, like being one of the guys, ordering a pizza, watching a movie, things that I don't think anything of. But to him, he's always around folks that are like him. So it's like, I'm now cool because I'm around Mark, and Mark does all this cool stuff. And it was also a plus for his parents. He loved professional wrestling. They're like, "Mark, there's no way in hell we're ever going to take him to a professional wrestling thing. We can't stand it." I said, "Well, it just so happens I've been to WrestleMania and I've been to some of these things. So I like that, and I have no problem taking him to that." I'm like, "Oh, you're like a godsend to us. Where did you come from?" So we went to many events like that and other sports around town. And we also went to the movies, and we went just anything to just kind of get him out. And sometimes he would run into me because I used to work as a photographer working with models. So he's met a couple of the models, and he wanted to ask me all kinds of questions about what they're doing right now. Can we go see them again? And it's like, it was one of the best things I'd done. I'd taken the time to do. And so, with Love is the Answer, with a mentorship program, again, personally, I've seen how powerful that can be, let alone if it's going to be from all these different trained, certified folks that have gone through an actual program to really, love on that young person and do it for at least a year, and then see how that's going to go. Because I'm guessing most of those folks, just like myself, they'll want to continue doing it.
Yeah, that's the hope. That's the hope. And I've heard stories similar to yours, Mark, where someone starts for a specific amount of time, or maybe the funding runs out, as it always does, right, for nonprofits, but they want to keep on going. And that's the hope, is that we can just give people a little taste of what it's like to build into someone else's life. I've been really fortunate in that I've got several mentors that have been in my life for 20, 30 years. my dear friend Bill Townsend in Sacramento, he became a mentor when I was in college in the late 80s after I got out of the military. And he's a former Air Force guy as well, older than I am. I looked up to him, and he has been there through every major decision of my life since 1989, you know, and that has meant the world to me, you know, to have someone in my life like that. And that's what we want to do, is we want to create these relationships that maybe go beyond a year and, you know, wind up going 20 or 30 years. And we even have a great example in the film, at the end of the film, where Andrew and Jamel come together. And Andrew is the former cop who framed Jamel, and Jamel wound up in prison for something that he didn't do. And when it was found out that Andrew framed him, Jamel was released and Andrew spent time in prison. And then when Andrew finally got out of prison, and they're both back in Benton Harbor, Michigan, and they run into each other, Jamel forgives Andrew. But not only that, when they run into each other about a year later, when Jamel's trying to get a job somewhere, and the lady that he's talking to says, "We have to give you a mentor," and the mentor that they want to give him is Andrew, who works at that place, the man who had put him in prison. And, you know, he thought about it and he prayed about it, and he said, "You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and let this happen." And from that moment on, Andrew and Jamel became like best friends. The most unlikely person to become Jamel's mentor, right, became his best friend, like brothers. And they're I mean, that relationship is real. And they're a sterling example of what can happen when two people come together, you know, for, you know, just for mutual benefit, you know, for the mentor. And you know this, Mark, the mentor gets as much out of the relationship as the mentee. You've probably grown just as much as the people that you've mentored, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what we want to create. We want to spread that and let people know that you don't have to be a superhero. You don't have to have, you know, 20 hours a week to spend. Just give a little bit of your time, you know, with your full heart in it, and it can be life-changing. And we're not only saying let's mentor young people. We want to mentor returning citizens who are often neglected. We want to mentor peace officers because they're going through all kinds of stressors and often don't have anybody to talk to, you know, and we want to mentor others in the community, you know, just let's all just figure out a way to find somebody to love, somebody to wrap our arms around, somebody that we can make a difference for. And that's the whole basis of that mentoring program.
Yeah, I absolutely know exactly what you're talking about. It becomes something that you get so much out of it as the mentor. I think a lot of times people go into it thinking they need to fit a certain mold as a mentor, or they need to have financial resources that are available to them. It's none of that. It really just becomes your time and also committing 100% to it. And so if you say you're going to meet once a month, then you meet once a month. Maybe it becomes twice or three times a month. That's fine. That's great. But you don't have to do that. But understand that you don't want to go into it half-heartedly either, because then that can have a negative effect on the person you're matched up with. If you do it for a month and then you bounce out, it's like, this isn't for me. It's like, well, did you think about this before you decided to go through the training or decided to sign up for it? Because I had someone that signed up for the program that I was a part of, and she asked me all kinds of questions. I said, please ask me as many as you like. This tells me you're thinking about it, and that's actually much better than if you decide willy-nilly just to, oh, this sounds like fun. It'll make me feel good for a little while, and I'll do it. It's like, no, make sure that you really think it through. But once you do, man, you'll get so much out of it for everybody involved. And you bring up a really good point about the peace officers, people that are returning to society, other adults that they need some guidance too. They need that person to bounce things off of, the person to kind of remind them, hey, this is the path you want to be on. If you're kind of getting lured back towards this one, no. This is the one. This is why you should stay there, and I'm going to help support you on your journey down that path that's going to get you where you want to be.
Yeah, that's right. And our training, by the way, we have a basic training that's basically about 16 weeks, and then we have a corporate fellow program that's adds another 16 weeks to it. So there's 32 weeks of training, you know, and during that time, you know, we're going to have people drop out, and that's when we want them to drop out, right? Before they commit to be in someone's life. And then once they get through that training, they commit for a year. So it's 84 weeks. Our program, our formal corporate fellow program is 84 weeks long, but we hope to weed out the folks who just, don't want to do it before they even come close to mentoring someone. And that commitment, if you commit, even if it's 30 minutes a month through Zoom or a phone call, do it, and live up to it. And I guarantee good things are going to happen as a result of that.
Absolutely. And to kind of wrap this up, AJ, I mean, you've got so many things, so many wonderful things that are happening because of the project. And it's spreading out into areas you may not even thought it was going to, years ago when you started to work on this. Is there anything else that's, beyond that's maybe kind of in the early stages of some other aspect that you're trying to maybe have take shape in the fall or maybe even next year, or something else you'd like to, let the folks out there know about?
Yeah, we're super excited about our Love is the Answer Day. That's coming up September 17th. It's every year on that day, and all of our licensees are invited to hold an event that day. And now that things are starting to open up, and hopefully they'll stay opened up safely, we're going to be encouraging harvest festivals at our gardens and other things. And we're going to have a 3-hour or 4-hour long Zoom that's going to be happening that day. That'll be simulcast on YouTube as well. And just want people to, to participate. Tune in on September 17th. They can learn about it through our loveistheanswermovement.com or walkingwhileblack.com. And just in the meantime, just get involved with our work. Just watch the film, read the book, and do the work. That's the 3 things we ask people to do: watch the film, read the book, and do the work.
There you go, folks. And if you need the hyperlink, it's right in the YouTube description below. So as soon as this live stream's done, you can go right there, click on it, and it'll take you to everything that AJ just talked about, and the things that you want to do in terms of watching the film on different digital platforms, and then buying the book and just getting involved, basically. AJ, thank you so much for taking the time. I thoroughly enjoy talking with you and everything that you're bringing to the table, and you're bringing a lot. And I just love the fact that now we have this platform where we can now spread it out to other people. And so if they even found even one piece of this interesting to them, maybe that's enough to get them to start doing what we were just talking about watching the movie, reading the book, and then putting in the work.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, thank you so much, man. This has been an honor, a pleasure. Again, congratulations on your 200th episode, and just keep up the good work, man. You're making a real big difference in this world, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much, sir. And maybe we'll get a chance to actually talk again sooner than later. I would love to do a part 2, maybe sometime in the summer, or maybe as we get closer to September 17th to help promote the Love is the Answer Day and all the events going around the U.S. and the world. That sounds good. Count me in. I'm there. Okay, I'm putting you down then. All right. Have a great afternoon, a great evening over there. Stay safe, and everybody out there, thank you so much for joining me. And we'll hopefully get a chance to see you all sooner than later. Bye, everybody. Aloha.